Tonight, catastrophic crossing, a deadly journey for two families trying to reach the U.S. border. The grim search along the St. Lawrence River.
All are believed to have been attempting illegal entry into the U.S. from Canada.
As a growing number of migrants risk their lives.
Our police are pretty busy here. I mean, they ride around here all night.
The widening divide over the criminal case against Donald Trump.
A political hit job, and it's a disgrace.
No one should be above the law.
Uncharted territory for an unprecedented showdown. And when two telecom giants merge.
There are no new providers entering the market today. We are losing choice.
The impact on customers as the Rogers takeover of Shaw gets the green light.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Heather Wright.
Good evening. Police revealed today a tragedy in Quebec was the result of two families trying to make a perilous journey from Canada into the United States. Rescuers have now found 8 bodies in a Quebec marsh along the St. Lawrence River. 2 of them were children. CTV's Vanessa Lee reports from Akwesasne First Nation, where the discovery may be linked to a growing crisis.
A police helicopter spotted 2 more bodies in the water today. The lives of 2 families came to a devastating end in a marshy area of the St. Lawrence River. Police believe one is of Romanian descent. The 2 young children were Canadian. The other family is from India.
All are believed to have been attempting illegal entry into the United States from Canada.
Police are saying little about who was helping them and whether it was part of a larger operation.
Smuggling is common?
Oh yeah, that's been going on for a while.
People who live here say the tragedy comes as little surprise.
Yeah, a lot of the people that live along the shore, because that's where they drop them off and they take off in a boat.
Akwesasne Mohawk police say they have seen an increase in people trying to get to the U.S. through their vast territory, which straddles Ontario, Quebec, and New York State. 48 incidents of human smuggling so far this year.
It's money, quick money, but there is a risk that comes with it, whether it be through Montreal, Toronto, or Ottawa, that know because of where we're located that they could facilitate, and they'll find people within our community that are to a certain extent exploited because of their knowledge of the waters and the land, the lay of the land.
The bodies were found near a small boat belonging to Casey Oakes, a 30-year-old Akwesasne man who was last seen leaving the eastern end of Cornwall Island Wednesday night as heavy winds and rain rolled through the area.
Right now, as it stands today, Mr. Oakes is considered a person of interest that we're looking for, and there's nothing that leads me to believe at this point in time that he is related to this. The investigation will determine that.
As the search for Oakes continues, a condolence fire has been started at the local recreation center. It's where members of the community and first responders are gathering to support each other through this tragedy. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Akwesasne Mohawk Territory, Quebec.
A massive tornado touched down near Little Rock, Arkansas this afternoon, sending dozens to hospital and causing widespread damage.
The wind blew us back, and at that point we began to run to the back of the store, and then the store collapsed on us.
There have been no reports of deaths, but a state of emergency has been declared, and the National Guard has been called in to help. Tornado watches are in place for a number of areas stretching from eastern Texas north to Wisconsin and Iowa.
2 tornadoes on the ground.
That's where this video was shot late this afternoon, showing what appears to be 2 tornadoes touching down. The National Weather Service is tracking more than 24 unconfirmed tornado reports, mostly in Arkansas and Iowa. Joe Biden toured the damage from last week's deadly tornado in Mississippi today, while his predecessor prepared to face charges in New York on Tuesday. Donald Trump is the first former president to be a criminal defendant. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin with what is known so far about the unprecedented indictment.
The case against Donald Trump made headlines around the world. Though no one's seen the charges yet, they're still under seal. But he's reportedly facing as many as 30 criminal counts related to business fraud. His former fixer Michael Cohen was one of several witnesses who testified against Trump.
I am a convicted felon. I am a disbarred lawyer, but I also brought the documents.
The investigation centered into how money was paid to adult film actor Stormy Daniels and ex-Playboy model Karen McDougal to keep the women from going public with alleged claims of an affair. Trump denies it, taunting his former boss.
Donald, since we're talking about convicted felons, see you on Tuesday, pal.
Trump's legal team preparing for that spectacle when he surrenders in New York.
So he initially was shocked. After he got over that, he put a notch on his belt, and he decided we have to fight now.
From shock to full-on attack, Trump blasted the indictment as political persecution. Like any defendant, he'll be fingerprinted, a possible mugshot, no handcuffs, and the judge will decide if Trump makes bail.
The unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States for a campaign finance issue is an outrage.
Trump supporters, Republicans, even rivals are outraged.
They're trying to destroy Donald Trump because they fear him at the ballot box.
What are the charges against President Donald Trump?
Slamming the investigation by District Attorney Alvin Bragg, surrounded by heavy security today, outside police in uniform bracing for any protests. Trump ally Marjorie Taylor Greene calling on supporters to head to New York, tweeting, "We must protest the unconstitutional witch hunt."
Trump is expected to turn himself in on Tuesday, boasting tonight that he's already raised $4 million in the last 24 hours for his defense. Heather?
Joy Melvin in Washington. Thanks, Joy. Former Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole announced today he's resigning as an MP at the end of the spring session. He led the party during the pandemic, including a loss in the 2021 election, with members of his caucus voting to remove him a few months later. O'Toole says he remains a proud conservative and will continue to support the party, adding, "I will help in any way I can." O'Toole is a military veteran who was first elected in his Ontario riding more than a decade ago. He also served as a cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's government. The largest telecom takeover in Canadian history has been given the go-ahead. 2 years after it was first announced, Ottawa today approved Rogers' multi-billion-dollar purchase of Shaw Communications. The government hopes the deal will boost competition, but as CTV's Adrian Gabriel reports, that'll take some convincing.
We are at a crossroad for the telecom sector in Canada.
Though just what path the Rogers-Shaw merger leads Canadian consumers down is a contentious conversation.
There are no new providers entering the market today. We are losing choice.
The $26 billion deal will see Rogers Communications sell Shaw's Freedom Mobile to Quebecor's Videotron. Rogers will retain Shaw's television and home internet assets. Ottawa is pitching a bright future with promises of Videotron becoming a national provider.
What I heard from Canadians is that they want lower prices. And what we need then is more competition.
We already had a fourth cell phone carrier. That's exactly what Freedom Mobile was. And Videotron already existed as a cell phone carrier.
Limited options are a growing concern. The average mobile package costs nearly twice as much in Canada than the UK, France, or Germany. The other major mobility players in the Canadian market are TELUS and CTV's parent company, Bell Canada.
It's pretty ridiculous how much it costs.
Today's deal comes with 21 conditions the government claims are legally enforceable. Videotron must offer 5G services everywhere it operates within 2 years. Rogers must spend billions expanding its broadband and wireless networks while creating 3,000 new jobs and keeping a headquarters in Calgary for the next decade.
The promises made today are actually the original promises that Rogers made in the deal 2 years ago.
But there are absolutely concerns as to what this is going to mean for Western Canada and for a city like Calgary. Mergers often happen to find efficiencies. I have real concerns for job losses in the West.
If the companies fail to follow through on their end of the deal, the Canadian government issuing a warning saying that they will use every means necessary to enforce the terms. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Independent MP Han Dong has served a libel notice over media reports he says are, quote, false. Dong is demanding Global News and its parent company, Chorus Entertainment, apologize and retract stories alleging the former Liberal MP spoke to a Chinese diplomat about delaying the release of the two Michaels detained by Beijing. A spokesperson for Global News says the organization follows a rigorous set of journalistic principles and practices. The federal government is facing a perception problem tonight after a cabinet minister's family member was chosen for a top ethics job. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver reports on the opposition and reaction.
The office responsible for keeping parliamentarians honest now thrust into its own ethical conundrum after the Liberals named a cabinet minister's relative interim ethics commissioner.
Maybe they could talk about Liberal ethics violations around the Christmas table while they're eating turkey dinner as family members.
And with him is Ms. Martine Richard.
Tapped for the watchdog role is Martine Richard, whose sister is married to Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominique Leblanc. Richard has worked as a lawyer and investigator in the Ethics Commissioner's office since 2013. And while she was there, the commissioner found Leblanc breached conflict of interest rules by approving a business license to a company where a family member worked. Richard wasn't involved in that investigation. And in French today, Leblanc said he recused himself from this decision.
When the office is investigating a Liberal or an opposition party member, her appearance of a conflict of interest to favor the Liberals operates to taint that investigation and the ruling on all of those situations.
The Office of the Ethics Commissioner says Martine Richard has always had a conflict of interest screen in place, a preventative measure to shield the person from becoming aware of a situation that would place them in a potential conflict. The Prime Minister, who broke the Conflict of Interest Act during the SNC-Lavalin scandal, and again when he visited the Aga Khan's private island, today defended Richard's appointment.
From the very beginning, there were already measures in place to ensure that the work is done professionally and without conflicts given the connections.
Richard will serve a 6-month term and she'll earn a salary on par with the federal court judge, which right now, Heather, hovers around $338,000 a year.
All right, thank you, Annie. Some of the families who are forever changed by the mass shooting in Nova Scotia are concerned with the RCMP's response to the report by the Mass Casualty Commission. Mainly that senior officers said they hadn't read it. CTV's Atlantic Bureau Chief Creason Ajkate with the reaction tonight.
The RCMP interim commissioner and Nova Scotia's top Mountie both said they were committed in restoring the public's trust. However, both admitted to not seeing the commission's recommendations.
But I am committed to go through all single recommendations. We have a team in place for the RCMP to look at every single recommendations.
Not surprising, says Ryan Farrington, whose mother and stepfather were killed by the Nova Scotia gunman.
I don't think anything's ever going to change with the way the RCMP are.
Today, the Prime Minister wouldn't say if he was concerned by the RCMP's response.
There were very strong and clear recommendations put forward that are going to take time to absorb.
The report was available to the RCMP one day prior to its release. The commissioner said he was busy touring Portapic that day, meeting with those who experienced the mass shooting.
Taking a cursory search would have been better than saying I haven't looked at it.
The commission also calls for sweeping changes to end gender-based violence, calling it an epidemic. The report highlighted the gunman had a known violent and abusive past, including with his common-law spouse Lisa Banfield, and that there were systemic failures in enforcement and intervention.
Those who perpetrate mass casualties often have an unaddressed history of gender-based, intimate partner or family violence.
Among its recommendations, the commission calls for epidemic-level funding, adding that men need to be part of the solution.
Women have been carrying through community-based organizations the burden of protecting women almost exclusively for far too long. It's time for men to step up.
The interim RCMP commissioner says in the coming days and weeks he will review the recommendations with his team. Heather.
Creason, thanks for this. At least 36 people have died in central India after falling into a well, and a dramatic rescue operation shows how more than a dozen were rescued. Nearly 140 first responders, including from the Army, used ladders and ropes to rescue people and pull out bodies. The roof of the well, which also served as the floor of a temple, collapsed when worshippers gathered to celebrate a Hindu festival. After being admitted to hospital 2 days ago, the Pope is set to be released tomorrow and will take part in Palm Sunday service this weekend. The Vatican released this video of the pontiff baptizing a newborn in the pediatrics ward of the hospital. Today, he also visited other children, handing out Easter eggs. The 86-year-old Pope Francis was being treated for bronchitis. Coming up, a test drive for artificial intelligence.
You can think of it as the ChatGPT for self-driving.
How a Canadian company is trying to get way ahead of its competition. Plus, the toddler on TikTok in tune with his emotions. Italy became the first Western nation to block ChatGPT today after the country's privacy watchdog said it wasn't satisfied with the popular chatbot's privacy protocols. Italy's Data Protection Authority gave GPT's makers OpenAI 20 days to report on how it is protecting user data, or be fined 20 million euros, just under 30 million Canadian. The agency says the ban is conditional and would be lifted when, quote, ChatGPT respects privacy. Artificial intelligence is the driving force behind revolutionary advancements in autonomous vehicles, including at a Toronto company whose AI-powered big rigs are already doing road tests. Here's CTV's John Benavelli-Rao on the trucking transformation.
While for years we've been promised truly autonomous vehicles that don't require a human backup, progress toward that's been frustratingly slow.
I believe that self-driving is really going to have an impact.
But at the Toronto headquarters of the company she founded, we met Raquel Erdison, who's using artificial intelligence to speed things up radically, starting with self-driving trucks.
It's a game changer in terms of, how fast you can go in terms of developing this technology.
The Wabi driver has two components.
Called Wabi, the 2-year-old company is already testing big rigs in the U.S. Erdison is a professor of computer science at the University of Toronto and an AI pioneer who used to lead Uber's self-driving division.
Our high-fidelity driving simulator, or simply put, the ultimate school for self-driving vehicles.
Her startup launched with more than $100 million in funding. What am I looking at? And they're using AI to help simulate the real world, and it looks just like what a human driver would see.
You can create, animals, you can change the weather conditions, you can do all sorts of things.
Generating a dizzying number of scenarios, it's hooked up to a computer driver and the system learns on its own.
You can think of it as the ChatGPT for self-driving, that is able to create all these different situations that a truck could actually potentially see in the road.
It can drive millions of kilometers virtually, training that they say is not only cheaper but safer and faster. Then with a safety driver on board, it can be put to the test.
For us, the trucks, even the first day that go on the road, are super, super intelligent already, thanks to the simulator.
Employing 130 people and backed by Volvo, they're focusing on long-haul highway driving and think the technology could help with a shortage of human truck drivers. But when might we see fully autonomous trucks?
So this is the $1 billion question, right? It's like, when are we going to see it?
Erdison is hesitant to give an answer, but says certainly in less than a decade. And the visionary hopes to apply the technology to more than just trucks. John Benavelli-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
The motorist behind the wheel of a speeding car in Belgium survived a spectacular crash caught on surveillance camera. The driver lost control of the Mercedes, which went airborne through the wall of a sports complex before landing on a basketball court. None of the young players finishing a practice at the time was injured. The driver was treated at hospital. Still ahead, pitching the question. A proposal that didn't quite go as planned. Former South African Olympian and Paralympian Oscar Pistorius, who was convicted for killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, was denied parole today. The 36-year-old will stay in jail for at least another year after the parole board found he had not served the minimum detention period to be let out. Pistorius was sentenced to 13 years in prison and will have a new parole hearing next August. Meghan Markle has won the defamation lawsuit brought against her by her half-sister after a U.S. judge said statements made by the Duchess of Sussex were a matter of opinion. Samantha Markle accused her sister of making false and malicious statements during her interview with Oprah Winfrey. Specifically, at issue were Megan's claims she grew up an only child and had no relationship with her sister. In the decision, the Florida judge said Markle's opinion of her childhood could not be proved false. Love was in the air at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles last night. The perfect setting, according to one fan, for a proposal. So Mr. Romance here jumps on the field in the middle of the ball game, gets down on one knee, all set to propose when he is tackled by security. It all worked out in the end. His girlfriend saying in a social media post that while it was a bit extreme, she did say yes, and the couple are engaged and likely banned from Dodger Stadium. Still to come.
Don't be scared to tell your feelings.
The BC toddler getting a lot of attention for saying how he really feels. We leave you tonight with the tiny TikToker whose emotional intelligence rivals most adults. Aldi Panardos captured the hearts of millions during a candid conversation with his mom after a particularly bad day. But as CTV's Melanie Nagy tells us, Aldi's bad day became the source of a very insightful message.
You know, Alia?
A video on TikTok.
Life is like that. We get upset.
Captures a bedtime conversation.
It's okay. We're learning.
Between a 4-year-old and his mom.
I was a little bit upset. More than a little.
More than a little upset?
Before their chat, Aldi Panardos was having a bad day, but instead of going to bed mad, he candidly shared his feelings.
You hurt my feelings by not going outside, so that's why I didn't want to make this a small choice.
The heart-to-heart has now been viewed by millions of people.
I was like shocked and, I didn't really expect this.
Jonisa Panardos admits she's surprised by the attention. She says it's not unusual for her son to make known what he thinks or feels. In fact, it's something he's been doing since he started talking.
I would give him time and he will eventually say what he feels.
While the pair talk a lot, the conversation caught on video sprung from what Jonisa describes as a meltdown. Turns out, Aldi had a tantrum after not being allowed outside.
I asked him how he felt that night. I was even amazed how he answered me.
A tough day can be, tough to process. But after a little reassurance, Aldi was all right.
We get upset, we get mad, we cry.
That's emotions, Mama.
While it's not always easy to be emotionally honest, Aldi believes being open is a way to be
happy.
He also has this advice for kids and adults.
Don't be scared to tell your feelings.
Another Aldi tip, no matter the discussion, ending it with a hug always feels better. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
Very good advice. That is it for us tonight. I'm Heather Wright for Omar and all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.